Hey, everybody, this is Liz from Augusta, and today I have someone super special that I would love for you to meet. He has quite the story to share, and we look forward to hearing so much about you. So, if you could share today your name and your location, and a little bit about your childhood, your family, and what brings you to be the person you are today.
Okay, my name is Garrett Smith, and my location is Glendale, Colorado, which is just a little suburb in Denver. I was born and raised, I guess, in Idaho. I have an older brother and a younger brother. And Boise is really the only, there's like maybe two big cities in there. So we were just outside of Boise, so it still wasn't insanely rural.
Mm-hmm.
But almost all my family lives there. So I feel like I had a really good upbringing, two super solid parents and great siblings. And then my whole extended family, pretty close with. Went to the same small Christian school from
Wow.
kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. And started kind of just out as the neighborhood lawn boy at like 15 or 16 years old, just like in the summers trying to make a little extra money. And it's basically all I've done. I went to college for 1 year. I made it one whole year. And then I decided I just was ready to start working and doing something that was a little more, I don't know, I felt a little bit bored just sitting in class. Not that it was like necessarily easy. It wasn't, I guess, what I wanted to do and how I wanted to be spending my time. So that was last year, I guess. So I dropped out May of 2022. And that's when I kind of started Augusta here. So
Excellent. Okay, so we'll back up a little bit. What were you going to college for?
Entrepreneurship.
Okay. And you have owned two Augusta locations. And so
Yeah.
how old are you?
20.
You're 20.
Yep.
Okay. So right away people are thinking, "Wow, that is crazy. He has owned two locations." But we need to tell the story behind that to bring you to really what we're seeing today is a miracle and of healing and grace. And so we're really excited to hear what can happen for somebody and that somebody could come back from what you've gone through. So share a little bit. Were you very athletic in your youth, or what kind of sports did you guys do?
Yeah, so I played sports all growing up. When I was younger, it was baseball and traveling in the summers for that and all the fun stuff that comes with that. And then through high school, I really narrowed down to basketball and golf. I also played football a little bit when I was younger, but really I really loved basketball, but golf was the sport that I was best at. Or I don't know, there was a lot less competition living in Idaho and going to a small school playing golf versus basketball, because everyone wants to play basketball, but not everyone played golf. So I would say, played those basketball all 4 years in high school. And then the spring of my senior year, I decided not to play golf so that I could focus on work.
Okay. And what about snowboarding and skiing? Did you do any of that?
Yeah, I did. I snowboarded a little bit when I was younger, but then I think my sophomore or junior year of high school, I got way more into it. So I still go. Colorado is a great place to live if you enjoy skiing or snowboarding. So yeah, I definitely, in the winter times, that's how I like to spend my weekends that are free. Definitely not every
Okay.
weekend, but
Okay, wonderful. So we have to tell a little bit section of your story and then go back to the snowboarding, skiing. And so were you mostly a snowboarder? Is that what you like to
yep,
do
that's
more
all
than?
I've never skied before. It's only
Yeah,
been
okay.
snowboarding.
Yeah, same here. It's more fun as far as I know. If you've never done skiing. So when is the first time you heard about Mike? You were already mowing how old were you when you started mowing?
I was 15. I think it was the summer after my freshman year of high school. So my first year, I did $2,400 in a whole season. I was pretty proud of that.
Ooh.
Yay, big numbers. Um, I'm trying to think when exactly it was, but I remember the very first place I found Mike I think it was on the podcast or it was YouTube, one of the other. And I
Mhm.
remember kind of just following him. And then I don't know if I was listening to old content or if had just came out, but I remember him announcing that you guys are franchising, and that it was like, I think it was you guys were advertising 12,500. And I just remember thinking, oh my goodness, I want to do that so bad. But like on a business that does like, and maybe at that time, so my first year I did like 2,400. The year after that I did like 11,000. I was like, okay, that's like not even close to attainable for me.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, that just like it really, really piqued my interest. And then I obviously kept following Mike. And then yeah, I can just, you want me to keep going, I guess?
Yeah, I'll
Tell me.
ask some
Okay.
questions there. So, you wanted to become a franchisee when? Like, how long had you followed and been listening to the content before you decided that you wanted to do that and then had your call with Mike?
Okay. So it was probably a year between hearing, okay, you guys are franchising, to me scheduling the introductory call. Between that time, it was when COVID shut down school, which was my junior year. I think it was March of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I decided I was tired of cutting lawns, and so I was going to start doing landscape construction. So
Oh man.
I bought some online courses, and I joined a business group focused on landscape construction.
Mm-hmm.
And still remember, because I was like 16 or 17 at that time, and my
Mm-hmm.
mom's seeing like transactions of like, I bought landscape business course, and then I bought like a group of another courses, and I think the total it was like over 1,000, and she was just like, what are you doing? Like, these are online courses, this is like not a good idea. And
Yeah.
but I was pretty hard set on learning. And so from that March to that October, I was really, really focused on landscape construction. So we did like pergolas. We would do water features. We would install irrigation, do sod,
Wow.
plants, rock. Just a lot. We built a bocce ball court that I absolutely lost my shirt on once.
Wow.
It
We
turned
did that
out well,
too.
but yeah. Yeah, it turned out well, but it was not a very profitable. But yeah, so I kind of just focused on that. So through after my junior year that summer, it was like me and one full-time guy, and we were doing 20, 30 or 1,000, 20 to
That's awesome.
30,000 a month.
Awesome.
Just working like 6 days a week. And like,
Yep.
that was when I learned that people take like Saturdays off, and like apparently you're supposed to let people have like Labor Day and Memorial Day off. I was unaware of that, but
That was us too.
yeah. So, and imagine even paying people on those days. That was insane to me. But
Yes.
we would do landscape construction, like I think Monday through Thursday, or it always ran into Friday. And then we'd do all of our mowing accounts, like half day Friday and all day Saturday. So then going into the school year, I was still committed to going to school and playing sports. So I was trying to figure out how I was going to sustain it. So I
Mm-hmm.
hired a couple more guys, and through my senior year had 2 to 3 full-time guys, down to 2 in the winter, but 3 through the fall. And I really kind of doubled down on the business. And so during that summer, it was super lean. It was like my old beat up F-150, and then a super old trailer. And I would just rent equipment whenever I needed it. But I decided, let's 10X it. Let's grow this thing. Going into me coming out of the field, going into school, and being, I guess, less focused. Let's hire up. And so I got into debt. I
Oh
bought
no.
myself a diesel truck. I wrapped it, and then I got another truck, and then another truck. Financed a ditch witch, bought a dump trailer brand new off the lot, and kind of
Oh
just
my
all the
word.
money that I had saved up through that summer, it just went right out the door. Going into winter too. So that was definitely a mistake on my end. And I went from me working out in the field, I was probably out in the field 60 hours a week, and then another 10 or 20 meeting with clients and that stuff, to me being in the field basically zero because I was a full-time student. And that just profitability just like absolutely eliminated. And then we
Yeah.
started branching out. That's when we did like the bocce ball court. We were just transplanting trees. We were doing just all sorts of, we started doing pavers and all sorts of stuff I had no business doing. It was a lot of fun, and we always, we made sure that the project was done correctly, which sometimes took 2 tries.
No kidding.
But yeah, so I think it was that October of my senior year. Went on a whim. I was like, I'll just schedule an introductory call with Mike, because it had been in the back of my mind kind of the whole time. And really, at that point, I really wanted to scale the business, and I felt like it would scale a lot better with Augusta. And then the other thing in the back of my mind was potentially wanting to go to college, but not wanting to shut down the business in Idaho. So I felt like the only way to do that was to buy into Augusta, to have the systems there that it could be handed off to someone. So the original goal was to start in Nampa, and I think I bought in March of 2021, and the goal was by August it would be basically handed off. I could go to Denver, go to school, and then start a second location. That was the
Got it.
original goal. That obviously didn't happen. But yeah, the first introductory call, it was almost like a consulting call. I think I've shared this before, but
How
I was
old
just
were you?
asking. I think I was 18, I believe, at that
Okay.
point. So yeah, it was almost just like a consulting call because I obviously had all sorts of issues in my business. And so I remember just like, that was like the one thing that stuck out. We didn't even talk about Augusta a ton. It was just like, okay, I have all these problems and you have all the answers. So let's figure out how I can make the business a little better. And then I think there was 2 more calls. I want to say one in December, which was actually, I don't know. I think the one in December was basically, okay, how am I going to come up with the money? And
Right.
then in March, or February, just trying to figure out when training was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah. So you had no credit at 18 years old. So your first $1,000 that you spent on these courses, was this coming out of your parents' account or your account?
oh no, it was my account. At that point, I was pretty profitable because I was like working out in the field all day.
Mm-hmm.
But through Wells Fargo, like they have like access to my account when I was under 18. And so
Ah,
they could
okay.
see like these transactions, and yeah, it was still my checking account. And that was being under 18 with the bank was a real hurdle.
Yes.
Just cause I was not able to figure out a way to get a credit card. I had a spending limit of $500 a day. And I just remember marching into the bank being super upset one day because I had just bought a bunch of pavers and it was like $3,000 and I got my card declined, but I knew I had the money and I just remember being like so embarrassed from that. So yeah, definitely like the banking side. Once I got 18, it got a little bit easier, but still credit being self-employed and young is still a challenge.
Yeah. So when you bought the truck, the ditch witch and all of this stuff, was that a loan from your parents or were you able to get a loan from the bank?
So that was a process of getting my parents on board. And so that was probably a 3-month process of starting out with, oh, I wonder if I finance a ditch witch. And they're like, no, like you don't need one. How would you ever do that? Like, no. And then like 2 months later, it's like, oh, let's maybe talk about this. Like, what if this were to happen? And I wouldn't say they really saw the vision of what I wanted. Even I think in July, I was looking back at the numbers. I think we did 41,000 in July, right after
Wow.
my junior year.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was at the end of July or August where I financed the diesel truck and I financed the ditch witch and paid cash for the dump trailer. But it was through that saying like, okay, this is what I really want to do. I potentially don't want to go to college. Like I'm doing this. It's not just a summer thing. I'm doing it through the school year. And so the ditch witch, that was a little bit interesting. I basically got a loan from, it was a high interest loan
I'm
from
sure.
some company. And when I sold that ditch witch, I didn't read through the thing very closely, but I learned, oh, these are the terms if you terminate the loan
Yes.
early. And I was rather disappointed with my decision to sign that loan. And that was, I have to remember what they said. I think that one was technically financed under the business, which I think when I financed it, they just looked at the last 3 months revenue, which was like 98,000. And they're like, took a risk, obviously, with high interest and all these fees and all that stuff. But I believe they still, my parents' name didn't appear on it, but I think they still had to check my parents' credit. And I don't remember the details of that.
Yeah.
But then the truck, definitely, it was my parents co-signed on that.
Okay.
And that was just a traditional through a local credit union.
Okay. So long story short, you ended up becoming a franchise and you
Yep.
had this franchise in Idaho, correct?
hmm
And how did you get your parents on board in regards to starting a franchise?
So at that point, it was mostly getting my mom on board, I would say, because she was usually the one that I would talk business to. And during
Mhm.
that time, my dad, he's in real estate. And so he was working even more than I was just because it's Boise. And he was in new construction as well. So Boise is
Mm.
a very much boom or bust market. There's a lot of new development there. And so selling new construction, he was super, super busy with that. So it was more a matter of getting my mom on board. And compared to the business group that I was a part of, which she was not a very big fan of,
Mm-hmm.
this was a lot better. It, it was more like the type of people that I want to become and shared values and that stuff. So I feel like that played into it. But
Mm-hmm.
then also it being a franchise made her a little more okay with it. But at the end of the day, in order to pay my franchise fee, I had this big red lifted truck that was my personal truck
Oh man.
on top of the diesel truck that had the shiny wheels and tires and the brand new wrap and like all that stuff. That was
Yep.
the diesel truck was just a horrible truck. It broke down all the time, but it was cool. So I sold my personal truck, which was that hurt because
Hurt my soul.
yeah, it hurt my soul. I bought it in December, and then I think it was like January, and I was like, well, unless I magically come into some money, I'm gonna have to sell this truck. And then I did kind of magically come into a couple thousand. One of my friend's parents was moving, and they were getting rid of a lawnmower, and it was like a commercial Exmark. And they were like, hey, we are moving tomorrow. If you can get this, like literally today, you can have it. It's yours. It's
Wow.
free. And it was like this massive, like we had to get a car hauler trailer. It was
Wow.
just absolutely massive. Didn't fit in the dump trailer. So literally pulled up with like a 20-foot car hauler and hauled it away, cleaned it up, and then sold it for like 3,500. And honestly, if that hadn't have happened, I don't know if I would have been able to buy in. But it was
Wow.
that and the truck that gave me the
Yeah.
money to buy in.
Yeah. So you bought in what month and what year?
In 2021, I think it was February and March, I went to training March 16th or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. So in the spring. So right before you came to training, something happened. Can you share that story?
Yeah, I was snowboarding in Idaho. I was at a train park, and I was so in the train park. There's like a bunch of rails, and so I jumped up onto a rail, and I was going too fast for the size of the rail and the size of the jump onto it, and I overshot it, and so I was leaning forward, and so I landed right on the very end of the rail, came off, and it was super icy that day, like bad conditions, and I caught my front edge, and then just like smacked down and hit my kidney and then my head on the ground, and I was wearing a helmet and everything. I kind of just thought I got the wind knocked out of me. But the pain didn't really go away. So after we did another run, and then after that, went to the car, and I was just miserable. And so I called my mom because she's a nurse, and she was basically like, "Yeah, you probably need to call it for a day. Maybe we'll take you to the doctor like tomorrow or something." So we're like going down the mountain, and I'm just miserable. And I'm with my older brother, and finally I'm like, okay, like I need an ambulance. Like I'm so miserable at this point. And so an ambulance like met us halfway up the mountain and drove me to the hospital. And then I had surgery on my kidney that night, I believe. And then I was in the hospital for like, I think it was 4 days.
So what happened to your kidney? Did it tear?
It lacerated. So yeah,
Okay.
I think essentially it's the same thing. You would know better than me.
And then what about your brain? When you were driving down, were you getting foggy? Were things getting blurry? What was happening in your thought process?
So I don't remember anything super like head wise. The pain was just so bad, like in my side. That's really the
Mm-hmm.
only thing I could think about. But I remember after surgery, like the second or third day in the hospital, being like sensitive to light, and then being out of the hospital and just like staring at my phone and like watching Augusta YouTube videos and Mike's content. Like I remember that hurting my head and just being a little
Yeah.
sensitive to light and sound.
Yeah. So at that point, did your mom start to become concerned? What started to concern her, and for you guys to think there could be something wrong with your brain?
Yeah, so I guess it was more like when we were out of the hospital, it's like, okay, you probably have a concussion. Probably just need
Yeah.
to take it easy for a little
Yeah.
bit. It makes sense. I guess in my mind, I was like, I was wearing a helmet. Like, I don't think you can get a concussion with a helmet, which doesn't make sense.
Right.
Like, of course you
Right.
can. Um, but yeah, that was it. It wasn't a huge, we were obviously like more concerned about the kidney because when I got out of the hospital, I was just so weak. I couldn't even walk on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like, it's weird. I've talked to like a few other people that have injuries to their kidney. It's weird how much it affects like the rest of your body and how just weak
Mm-hmm.
you become.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was top of my mind. And the concussion symptoms weren't very bad at that point. It wasn't until probably a couple weeks later, in the following like 2 months that it got at its worst.
Okay, so when you came out of the hospital, when did you come to training?
Okay, so I think it was 2 weeks after, I want to say a week and a half or 2 weeks after I came out of the hospital.
Yeah.
I came to training, and if I remember correctly, it was like on my spring break
Yeah.
or just before.
Yeah, because
Um,
you guys were talking the entire time about how you were going to go full time into school while they or he ran the business for you.
mhm. You're talking with my team at that point?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, that was kind of the plan. So I think it was 2 weeks after training, and had just barely like been cleared, and I still haven't gone back to school at that point. So it was like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm too sick to go to school, but I can go to training.
Yeah,
So I went
yeah,
to training, and I remember like I still couldn't walk very fast. Like I was still pretty weak at that point.
yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Your personality, we had never met you before, and you were so zealous and you were so dedicated. You're so excited about this, and we caught all that excitement. And one thing that was unusual is after you left, you sent Mike a voice note, and it was the longest voice note I've ever heard. And I think it was 5 to 7 minutes. And
okay.
I don't even know if you would remember this, but it was so full of appreciation, excitement, your plans, all just it was so overwhelming, really. You had sent it to Mike and then he sent it to me because he was so impacted. And really you had brought it in that God had led you to Augusta, and how much you appreciated Mike and his testimony and his walk with God, and how you thought it was a kind of a supernatural thing that you were brought together with him and with Augusta. So then you start running the business. Now tell me what your symptoms were when you were try to do estimates and try to work in the software.
Yeah. I did not remember it being 5 to 7 minutes long, but I remember him texting back like almost right away,
Yeah.
and just thinking that was so cool. To me, I didn't realize that it was possible to have like this sort of Christian community within business, and I thought they somewhat were in opposition to each other. So that has just been huge to realize, oh, it is possible to be a Christian in business. It's not easy, but it's possible, and it's possible to have good people to look up to and good mentors. So, um, but going into running the business, kind of I would say it almost started at just right before training or right after training is when the symptoms got up there, like starting getting worse. But it was kind of just like a brain locking up when I'd try to do estimates and being super worried like I wouldn't get it right. And it was like really not my personality, which is I'm usually pretty laid back and just like gung ho and like, let's just go for it. Let's just close the deal and hopefully we make money on it. But
Yeah.
then it turned into like, oh, I don't know how many budgeted hours. And I would literally just hit that roadblock and I couldn't like rationally like work through that. So for doing estimates, just a nightmare. Cause I would just like start freaking out and like getting like, just like my brain would just lock up and I could not move on from that. And then kind of with I remember just setting up our treatment package, setting up software and all that stuff is like, okay, I shouldn't be looking at a screen like a ton throughout the day, but I do need to do this, and just wanting everything to be like absolutely perfect,
Mm.
but then not knowing like what perfect looked like and like, oh, what is the perfect treatment package? And so I like couldn't really make any progress through
Mhm.
that. And I was just extremely scared to like not have everything right, and kind of
Mhm.
I don't really see myself as a control freak, but I feel like in that time, like I started like needing like everything to be like a certain way.
Yeah. At that time, did your mom have you go back to the doctor and did they do some brain scans?
Yeah, we went to the doctors a lot in that period. Yeah, we definitely did brain scans and met with a couple different doctors about it, and kind of through those couple months is the process of, okay, you need to take it a lot easier. And so my mom actually took a leave of absence. She was in a leadership, I think she was, I'm trying to think, managing the heart program for like 6 different hospitals. So she had a pretty like, I don't know if demanding, like she had like a job that where she was like pretty much needed, but she like pretty quickly just took a leave of absence to help me run
Wow.
the business.
Yep.
And so as a matter of trying to explain service autopilot, and I remember
Oh
just like
man.
trying to set up clearance and getting that
Yep.
all, it was just like, that was like almost a whole day. Just
Yeah.
like, and like
I
I had
have,
done it before, but
yes. I have a vision of where I was in the office, what computer I was looking at, and your mom contacted us really in a panic, like kind of scared.
yeah,
Like there's something wrong with Garrett and he can't think clearly. I'm having to go on every estimate with him and try to do them. I don't understand service autopilot. And it was so hard for her. Were the two of you on the phone call with Lonnie the one time?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
trying to work through everything and get the account set up, and your poor mom, it was crazy. Now, at what point, because the listeners are hearing that you own a franchise in Colorado, and here you're saying you own one in another state. So what happened that this business closed up or stopped, or what happened with that? Did you actually just stop working and your parents try to run that one, or did they just close the business down?
So essentially what happened is it got to the point, like through meeting with doctors, that it was like, okay, we need like to completely, like I need to like just not be in business. Like this is not working. I'm not getting better. And like I just need like basically no stress and kind of like a
Mm-hmm.
restart. And I really didn't want that. But I was meeting with like my pastor like every week and just kind of working through like all the emotions and like still
Mm-hmm.
with like a brain that felt broken and couldn't really
Right.
rationally think through things. And so it
Yep.
kind of got to the point where it's like, okay, like business is not my number one thing in life. Like overall, it is not the one thing that's most important to me.
Yeah.
And so just being okay with letting go of it,
That
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 was
had to
definitely
be
a process.
devastating. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was everything. I mean, it was like it was all I'd spent my time on. Like that summer, I think I had kind of leaned into like workaholicism. I don't know how you say that.
Yeah,
Workaholic
workaholism.
tendencies.
Yes,
Yeah,
that
there we go.
works.
And I didn't hang out with people. All I did was work. I usually took
Mhm.
Sundays off still, but besides that, it was only work. It was the only thing I thought about, only thing I cared about. I just wanted money. I
Yep.
want a nicer truck. And so, but then transitioning, like still with Augusta, it's like I feel like my priorities shifted and they
Mhm.
became more healthy, but it was still like everything I'd put into that. And I had basically no money to show for it.
Mhm.
Right after I joined Augusta, I paid off the IRS because I messed up my payroll taxes. And so, like, when everything was said and done, we ended up selling it to my foreman, his dad, and his uncle. They formed a partnership and bought me out, thankfully, because if they hadn't, and I was able to pay off all my debt. I think I had about 80,000 in debt, and then I owed 15 to the IRS and my accountant. And so I was able to pay everything off, have no debt, and still be above water. But I didn't have a ton to show for myself,
Yeah,
and all that
so
hard work.
so your brain was overstimulated and they wanted your brain to rest, and yet now
Hmm.
you've got this massive disappointment of, you had this plans for the business with which not knowing if you would even get well, like you had no idea if you would ever be 100% or if your brain would feel whole again. And so while your uncle and your dad ran the business, were you watching what they were doing, or did you try to completely detach and have nothing to do with it?
I would watch a little bit, but I was kind of trying to detach. But then it like a lot of times I would be like not emotionally intelligent and like correcting them in certain things in like stressful situations. Oh, you should have done this differently.
Yeah.
And there was a number of things that happened, and the two major like cash things that happened up because we were just like burning through money at that point. Everything
Hmm.
like projects were just taking longer. I had one client, I didn't have them sign the change order, and so they didn't pay the final like 4,000 for the project.
Oh
And the same
man.
thing, we were doing contracts with I had one builder where like they would build a house and then I'd or our team would install the landscaping,
Hmm.
and I didn't have him sign a change order, and that was like right at the very end. And I don't remember the amount, but it was maybe like 5,000. And so like
Wow.
those two right next to each other, like on a small business, like that was enough to be like, okay, we have no cash. This is not working. Garrett's not getting better. Like we
Hmm.
have to sell, and thankfully we were able to.
Yeah.
Um,
So your uncle and your dad, how long did they run the business?
so it was my uncle, my mom,
Oh,
and they
sorry. Yeah.
basically, yeah, no worries. I would say that's probably like a 3 week period. and it was just a matter of we had one big install for a builder, and then probably a couple other smaller projects. And my mom and my dad actually used to run a landscape business about 20 years ago, real briefly for like a year or two. So they actually, like, in terms of like plant knowledge, they know a lot. I'm not the person to ask on like anything like science about grass or plants or anything like that. So they actually knew like quite a bit more than me in that. But then the business side was like, it was kind of a struggle because I barely understood the Augusta systems or part of
Yeah.
them. And so for them to try to work in that framework, learn all the software, it was just not going well.
Yes, yes. So once the business sold and your uncle took over, how long did he run the business before he sold it to someone else?
Yeah, so it was May. So I bought in May back in Colorado, to skip forward a little bit. I bought in May of 2022 and they listed it for sale in May of 2022. So I had a quick like, oh shoot, should I move back to Idaho like
Yeah.
and try to buy this business? Like, what should I do? And I think I even emailed Mike, like, it's pretty much like knee-jerk reaction, like, oh, I gotta buy this and like gotta figure out how I gotta do that. But how do I keep this business? But they listed it for sale, I believe, in May. And then I want to say it was August, they sold it, and they actually sold it to my parents.
Which is a whole nother story in itself. So I'll have to get your
Yeah.
parents on here and hear their incredible side of the story. But at this point, then you wanted to start another one. You were tempted to come back and buy this one or run this one again, which ended up being sold to your parents. How in the world did you end up opening a business in Colorado? And where were you in your health at that point? And did you have the support of the family, feeling like, okay, you're well enough, you're good to go and do this again?
So to kind of rewind, yeah, I would say trying to remember the names of the years. I think it must have been 2021 that starting my freshman year of college, first semester, I literally took like 12 credits, which is the bare minimum. And I was a business major, so very easy classes. And I was just bored out of my mind. So I decided, all right, let's get a job, start working. Like I was working like 20 hours a week, maybe doing construction. And then in November, me and a couple friends started doing Christmas lights, and all of a sudden I was working 40, 50 hours a week.
Yep.
But I was like not bored, and I was having a lot of fun doing it. And so going from that November, I was like, I think it was like 4 of us just doing it on Saturdays. But it was like the entrepreneurial like itch. It was like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. This is what I've like done in the past, and I feel like confident in doing something you enjoy and you feel like you're somewhat good at is a lot of fun. And so at that point I was like, okay, I gotta at least have a business on the side, even if I'm going to keep going to school, because the plan was to just get my associates, because I felt like I kind of owed that to my parents, and they wanted at least a college degree, something to show for it. So I thought, all right, what side business should I do? And I was this close to buying a business that built aftermarket headlights for like lifted trucks.
Oh my word.
I was like going back and forth in the negotiation, and I knew nothing about it. It would have been a miserable failure, but I was about to spend like, I think it was like 6,000 or something is what I finally talked them down to. And then right before I did that, I was like trying to convince my mom that this wasn't a terrible idea. And it was still, it was like my money is what little money I had left over in a savings account after I'd sold Augusta. And then finally I was like, wait, why don't I actually do something that I know? Let's do landscaping. So I was like, rather than making a widest decision, just starting landscaping business and spending this money on advertising, why don't I try to make an acquisition, which I don't really know anything about. So then I bought out an aeration company.
Oh my
in March.
word.
Yeah. And then I bought into Augusta in May.
Awesome.
So that was kind of the progression.
Yeah.
But
so
at that point, Augusta was still supposed to be part-time, but that clearly
didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you bought into Augusta again, and did you start by yourself? What was your mindset in regards to equipment this time and your whole approach?
Okay, so I would definitely wasn't going to buy a diesel truck again, because that diesel truck I had was $2,000 or $3,000 every single month in repairs. It was just, yeah, not a great truck. But I was going to go more lean and more scrappy this time, and so going into May, I knew I had bought the aeration company, and I was like, okay, like May is when I can go to training, but I still need to be like getting clients. And so it essentially was me and like 3 extremely part-time guys. So it'd be like, okay, this guy's working a Thursday, this guy's working a
Oh
Saturday.
man. Yeah.
Yeah, it was not like how you would typically want to build a business, but just people like my friends at college. And
Mm-hmm.
so we did, I think, 10,000 in March, and in April, just like randomly, like me skipping class and like aerating or mowing, or like this other person, like
Mm-hmm.
just run around in a super, like a 1996 Chevy and
I
a
love
trailer
it.
that I was borrowing from someone, and aerators that would break down every other lawn, and just trying to make it happen.
Yep. Yep. So that's more like it. So you're starting with hardly any money. You're starting again. And where are you today in employees, profit wise? Are you still like really at the foundation? Is this going to be your first full season, first spring?
Yeah, basically first spring rush with
Wow.
Augusta. I mean, kind of third, but basically first.
Exactly.
But yeah, so my goal for last year was kind of get up to 30 or 40,000 a month in revenue.
Mm-hmm.
I'd done that before in construction, which it is like a completely different business, and you
Right.
can do more with less employees because you're selling materials as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the goal. I started having some issues with my back at the end of May. So basically, right after I started,
Oh man.
and yeah, kind of just like mentally was like, okay, I'm maxed out, and so we stayed under 20,000, so between 10 and 20,000 all of the summer months.
Mm-hmm.
And for a few months, it was basically me and one full-time employee, and he would just go out, and literally all he would do all day is just cut grass. And for a couple months, maybe it's only 1 month, I'm trying to remember exactly, but I wasn't able to do any field work. So I was literally just like trying to manage like pain and do all the back end office work. And we had a lot of complaints, and like it felt like everything was kind of falling apart like right after
Mm-hmm.
I had just started.
Yep.
And I felt pretty frustrated that I had, for the first time in my life, I was able to, well, for the first time since the summer after my junior year, I could work
Yep.
all this time, but I
Yeah.
wasn't healthy, and I couldn't do what I felt like I was capable of.
Right.
And so that was a somewhat frustrating process. But then through that summer, at least having one full-time guy that could at least generate revenue, and then getting a little healthier and returning to field work, I want to say in like September.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of just scraping by through the winter. But profitability wise, last year, I over purchased on trucks. So I had, I would say 2.5 trucks, but 3 trucks, but one of them was a beater. I mean, they were all beaters, but one of them was a stretch to get it started.
But you didn't go brand new this time.
No, not even close.
Smart.
But yeah, so profitability wise, I overspent because I was planning to grow to 30 or 40,000. So overspent, I would say, on marketing and shop space and trucks. So I basically made, I would say, almost enough to pay myself to live off of, and I made it through the winter, but not much above that. I think we finished the year 115,000, but that includes some revenue before Augusta.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe 10, 15,000 before I joined.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was through December.
Okay. So now starting this year, are you into this season? Are you mostly mowing, or are you having big projects this time too?
Yeah, so definitely our mowing season is very short. It's realistically like, if I just like listen to demand, it would be like May through September.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's a little brutal, but I'm supposedly starting mowing on Monday. So we're trying to make it April through middle of October,
Okay.
kind of stretch it a little bit to at least get like 6 months of mowing. So for February and March, it was all project-based work, and then starting doing a little bit of just basic treatments like aeration and organic fertilizer. But then, yeah, we're going to be pretty focused on mowing, especially in May. And I anticipate that we won't be able to do any projects if the demand is anything like last year.
Okay. You said you're going to start mowing on Monday. Well, it looks to me like you got some pins and a strap into your neck or into your back right now. So did you just have surgery?
No. This is my windbreaker from Ashley.
Oh, I love it. It looks like
Yeah.
2 pins were going into your neck. I
No,
love that.
this is for for when it rains.
That's awesome. So here I thought
Yeah,
you had surgery.
I had surgery on my hip like 2 or 3 weeks ago, or it was
Okay.
a non-surgical procedure. So I'm still.
Okay.
It's been a process, but I'm still like I'm in physical therapy right now, which is a big time suck but necessary. And I'm not fully back to field work 100%, but we're
Okay.
getting
But you're
there.
going to be
Yeah,
able to mow on Monday.
yeah,
Okay,
hopefully.
good. So what are your goals for this upcoming year?
Really, the one thing that I'm fixated on is getting to 50,000 in monthly revenue, and I want to have a little more security and not run things so tight. Have a little more
Yeah.
like just not even like yeah, just like working capital
Mm-hmm.
to make it less stressful and like make I don't know. I think I often run things too close.
Yeah.
And that would be my tendency is to not necessarily spend things on frivolous things, but be like, okay, we have some money. Let's just go crazy on Google Ads or let's buy a bunch of print, even if it's like prior to when I should be marketing in spring.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Okay. And then what's your big goal?
my big goal is to stay within the systems within Augusta and
Yay.
position myself. That's a big goal
It is a big goal.
because it
Yeah.
takes a lot to get there and a lot of discipline. But I want to grow within the framework that Mike has really grown out his locations in, and that you're seeing other franchisees start to grow within.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I think like Mike says this too, is it's a little silly to have like a 10 or 20-year goal, especially
Yes.
when you're just getting started because things change. Right now, I'm not married and I'm 20 and have no family and just kind of working a lot
Yeah.
and living on little to try to make it work. But hopefully that'll change. And I definitely want to have a family someday. So I could definitely see that goals and priorities would shift in the
For
future.
sure.
And so what I want to focus on right now is getting myself in a position where I have options and create opportunity for other people, but also, yeah, as I grow into the framework of having different locations managed by general managers and regional managers, and it's just a matter of how far up that I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
But the first step is getting to 50,000 a month. So
Okay. Now to tie this all up and bring it around together, we told that story. You told that story about your accident and all that happened. But in the midst of that, until now, until you started your other business, there's 10,000 thoughts and emotions and doubts and fears and everything. So what do you feel like has been your competitive advantage or the ingredients that brought you to, I don't know if you would say a full healing, but definitely we wouldn't be having this conversation today if something hadn't changed for you and your brain be so healthy.
yeah, I guess like the thought process was like God comes first, and it's not even necessarily that it's a list of like God's first and then business is a close second and then relationships and family is like 3 and 4. It's like God is first in everything, and he's in everything I do, and it's not like it's a category of life.
I
And
see.
so
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say like I've achieved that, and I live that out 100% of the time, but that's what I'm striving for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would say competitive advantage would be like delegation, because almost probably more than half the time I've ran a business, I've either been in school where I couldn't do all the field work, or having some sort of struggles with my brain or my back or
Mm-hmm.
something to where
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't rely on myself to generate revenue. And so sometimes I feel like I delegate too early. But I know a lot of people struggle with feeling like they need to be out in the field all the time, even as they grow. And I feel like I've had to do that somewhat prematurely, and so I become more comfortable and
Yes.
trusting of people because I know like I cannot do it all on my own.
That is awesome. So the fact that you have come to that realization at 20 is what people struggle with for 15 or 20 years before. I mean, it's taken me many years to delegate too, and it's vital to success in a business
Yeah.
for sure. And your family now, are they completely supportive of what you're doing? Do you live at home? What's your relationship like with them?
Okay. So all my family is still back in Idaho. So I live in Colorado. So I don't live at home right now. They are supportive of me. I would say my mom was a little, my dad was a little, didn't really understand it as much.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I was super aware of this. He didn't like really make it known, but his preference in the past was that I get a college degree because he didn't get his degree, and he feel like it really limited him in his
Yeah.
career prior
Mm-hmm.
to getting into real estate. And he didn't. I think it was more he never wanted us to feel like the financial strain of not having a degree and not having options and not feeling like you can provide enough for your family. And so I
Yeah.
think that's where it stemmed from. And I was also like a capable student, so it wasn't like um, it was a challenge to go to school, and
Yeah.
especially when I started getting really bad grades my senior year because I was just out working.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I had never gotten a B in my whole life, and I was
Oh
taking
my
like
word.
AP classes, honors classes, and then all of a sudden I had several D's on my report card, and my parents were not too happy about
No
that. And
way.
yeah, so then going into college, like that's what I would say. Both my parents really wanted that for me. But then finally, my dad said, I think it was right after he bought his own Augusta,
Yeah.
the one that I initially started in Idaho. But he finally like understood, and it was like it was probably a 2 hour phone call, but he just called
Yeah.
me up after he just binged like all of Mike's content.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know what, Garrett, this is a really good opportunity. You just got to stick with this, but
I
there's a lot
love
of
it.
systems to grow, and you don't
Yep.
need college, but this is all you need. It's like, yeah, I know, Dad. Like I've been trying to tell you this for like 2 years now.
Yeah.
And he's like, just like right over that, like, yeah, like what you can do is you can just build out these locations, and then you can get a reach. And I was like, yeah, like I know, Dad. Like that's the plan. And he's like, and then eventually, like you build it out, and then it's super valuable because it's in a franchise. And he's like explaining everything back to me that I've been trying to tell him. And so it was at that point that he realized, oh, like this is a viable career path,
Mm-hmm.
and believed in it so much that he bought an Augusta as well. So
Yeah, so you guys are the only ones in Augusta Nation where the parents own a location and the son owns a location. So do you talk together all the time, compare things, encourage each other? How's your relationship with your dad now with the business? Both of you being
yes,
owners.
yeah. So it's been super cool to connect in that way, because I would say prior, like it was almost every Saturday morning, when I was in high school, I would talk business with my mom. But during that time, my dad, he was super just maxed out with real estate, and just
Mm-hmm.
trying to do what was required of him in that. And I know my dad connected with his dad a lot in business. His dad used to run a couple furniture stores.
Mm.
It was actually a part of a franchise as well. And so that was one of the ways that I think my dad really related to his dad, but I didn't really
Mm-hmm.
have that in common with my dad. We would really just argue about like what sprinklers should be used on what side of the lawn, because and it was never really constructive when I
Yes.
was like in high school. But now being in the same systems with similar goals,
Yeah.
it's like a lot of like we have like we're like the exact same size right now pretty much.
Awesome.
So we have a lot of similarities, and I'll just get just absolutely books from my dad just talking about just like his mindset and what he's doing and like the issues he's having in his business. And so I've like never talked on the phone so much with my dad like my whole life, or just texted back and forth, and he's always sending diesel trucks that he thinks he's gonna buy, and I'm like, no, don't do it,
Don't do
Dad.
it.
He's not that bad about it, but sometimes. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely made, and he's a lot similar to me, to where he could just talk about Augusta and business all day every day, and he can't turn it off.
Yeah.
And so I didn't realize we were similar that way, like both business
That's
minded
good.
and singularly focused. And
Yeah.
so it's definitely brought us closer together.
Yeah, that is so awesome. So I really appreciate your time today, and I want to start to wrap it up. But I was wondering if you could share with us kind of what you're bringing in for content right now, podcast, YouTube. Kind of what are you listening to at this time?
Yeah, so recently, like last couple weeks, I've been trying to go back through all of the conference videos.
Oh, smart.
I'm doing a little bit of a deep dive on Alex Hormozy as well. One of the
Hmm.
things he actually said was, I'm sure you're familiar with Gym Launch probably better than I am,
Yep.
but he just remembers being super frustrated with members because they'd be like, oh man, I'm going to go read this book about how to hire. And he's like, we have literally a course for gyms of your size on how to hire people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do something that's so specific, like content wise. Don't like try to read a general book and then apply that to your business. Figure
Mm-hmm.
out like who actually, like for us, it's all lawn care and how does Augusta hire and what's worked for people specifically in our industry and even in our
Mm-hmm.
market, because there's several other franchisees near me. And so I remember hearing that. I was like, oh, I just got to rewatch all the conference videos. I got to make sure like I'm solid on all the content from Augusta, because that's the very most applicable. And that's from the people that have succeeded inside of the same exact systems that I'm trying to succeed in. And so that's been my recent like deep dive, is listening back through the conference videos. There's a week where I listened to Alex Hormozy's book like probably 3 or 4 times, which is a little unusual for me. I try to listen to a couple books a month, I would say, on
Which
Audible.
book did you read? Was it Jim Launch?
No, it was the $100
The
million offers.
Yeah, it's like the
Yep.
purple book, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I listened to that one twice too. I remember running exactly where I was on the trail, hearing him for the very first time, like just basics of Alex Harmozy. And wow, he's come a long ways in his content for sure.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because like there's a little bit of a nostalgia. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's nostalgic to listen to old landscape business course podcasts, because I'll literally go back to the lawn in Idaho where I first remember like cutting
Yes.
grass and listening to Mike, and I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. So it's crazy how the brain works like that.
Yeah, I love how you're sharing that, because you can go so many different directions, but if we would actually get incredibly good at what we're already doing, that's where we make the money and that's where we succeed.
Yeah. It's not cool to really watch a video on how to send a one-click estimate. But if you just like sit, like the difference from like reading a book for 4 hours or figuring out how to send a one-click estimate,
Yeah.
sending that out, and then getting 15 requests for estimates, like that, like 15 minutes is going to be way more like, it's going to do way more to turn the needle in your business than listening to a generic book about sales.
And understanding why the one click estimate. It's like once you get that, you're like, oh my word, free advertising. I already have all the
Yeah.
customers. Now I can get all this work and I've spent nothing. I've sent one estimate or one email, and here it all
Yeah.
comes flooding back in. It's really awesome.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then what kind of quotes are you reading recently? And can you share some with us to wrap up?
Yeah, one thing I think in like decision-making progress, it's not or decision-making process, it's not a quote that's super like high and like up there, but it's extremely
Yeah.
applicable. Mike says it a lot, and I don't know if he came up with it, but he's the one that always says it, is like prioritize progress over perfection. And
Oh,
so
it's
rather than
awesome.
just analyzing and thinking, trying to get the perfect solution, just go out, do something today. And then as you keep going and keep doing, you can gradually make that better and better and better. But being an entrepreneur, you're wearing all these different hats and you kind of have to juggle everything equally. And so make progress in all these different areas in your business, and recognize as you grow, you can perfect each area. But in order to start to scale, you're going to have to just focus on making progress.
That's phenomenal. So, in closing, to speak to the young guy who wants to start a business and wants to start a franchise, even, but let's say just for the small business owner, you've already have a lot of experience for someone so young. So, you actually can give advice on what you would do different, what they should focus on. Would you have any words of encouragement for someone who wants to start a business and they're really young?
Yeah. I think recognizing like the market we're in from a sales side, like people need our services so bad that I don't think your age is going to limit you. If you feel like, oh, I can't sell because I'm a little bit younger, people really need our service, and you can use that to your advantage. And people, it's a lot easier to trust. I feel like it's pretty easy to trust someone who's a little bit younger, and you can tell they're super passionate about this.
Mm-hmm.
Easier to build that connection. And people they want to get behind you and they want to support you. And a lot of our clientele is older. And so I feel like that was a pretty easy, like natural relationship, building that with clients. So I wouldn't feel like that's a barrier. I would definitely feel like that's to your advantage, your age.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing that I continue to fight is just always have more cash on hand than you think you should have. And yeah, recognize that it's important to have cash, and just because there's money in your account doesn't mean you need to spend it. And then trying to get more done with less. And so even though you could maybe fit a stand on 36 on your 5,000 square foot lawn, can you do it with a 30-inch? Can you get started with a residential 30-inch? I would guess you probably can. And prioritizing spending on marketing over equipment, and then having confidence and not making an acquisition, and just spend the money on marketing.
I love it. I love it. That's a great idea. That's great advice, great wisdom from someone so young. And I look at you as a peer, a partner, and so appreciate that you're a part of Augusta Nation. And I really look forward to working with you over the next several years and building your business with you. And so we'll close out for today. Thank you so much for your time. It's much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. Thank you for putting this on and scheduling everything.
Yeah, you're welcome. Have a great day.
You as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.